Hello, and welcome to our 13th episode of Trek Prime. And I got to be honest with you, despite any superstition around the number 13, it looks like this might be our lucky week because, the two of us had to work a little extra to get to this week. We both had some things we had to deal with. And actually, that dovetails into a subject that Jeff brought up to me, and we both agreed to expand on. And that is the subject of Star Trek's voice of reason species, the Vulcans. And I can do this with both hands and correct me the way it's supposed to be done, because that is actually a Hebrew sign. Leonard Nimoy talked about what it was called. I don't remember the name of it, but it's some kind of Hebrew sign. And so the main thrust of this subject, and I want to get to this first because it was Jeff's main idea, had to do with a muck time. Was it a muck time? Those of you who haven't seen the episode, I can't imagine you wouldn't. It's a classic. Spock is going through the Pumfar, which is a blood fever, where Vulcans are going to their home planet to take a mate. And the mate that he has, a woman named T'Pring, starts with this marriage and challenge business where he has to fight for her because there's some other person who wants her. And there's this whole ritualistic battle with all these different Vulcan weapons and gongs. And, now that I think about it, I'm looking at the plot of this episode whenever I see it. I've seen it many times. Some of these Vulcan weapons and gongs and ritualistic equipment and whatever it is all seems a bit fragile. And I'm going to leave that to Jeff to go into a little more.
Yeah, I was just thinking, let's just draw a comparison here. On Earth, when we make swords and stuff like that, and I had a friend in the military that was part of a club of people that used to go out and dress up in armor and stuff like that, and they had swords and everything, and they do these make-believe fights. Well, you never heard of anybody ever smashing a sword or breaking it in half while they were out there doing their thing. So, I'm figuring, we make our weapons strong enough to withstand whatever strength we are. And so here we go to Vulcan, and they make these weapons for this thing they were doing, this ritual they were doing. And when
the Kunut Kalefi.
Yeah. And when they have Kirk and Spock fighting, they got this long staff, and on one side's got this big bludgeon on the end of it, and the other one's got this kind of a curved blade on the end. And they're like, holding it, they're just fighting, just...
Oh, the Lurpa?
Yeah. And all Spock had to do was just snap it like that, and it just shattered the blade into glass. And I'm thinking, what? Come on. This is Vulcan. The Vulcans would design weapons that would be strong enough to hold up to the...
I was just going to think about Vulcans, because you mentioned Vulcans design these weapons. You would think that designing a weapon that could withstand the strength of a Vulcan would be constructed logically.
Yeah.
A strong weapon that a Vulcan could handle. And because Vulcans are stronger than humans, we know that, so they should have a stronger weapon.
The injury, they show him beating on the side of one of the gongs, and that breaks right down in half like it was nothing. And I'm like, come on. I'm thinking, what's the matter with Vulcan engineers?
If we take that from the realm of fantasy into reality, it's probably the big budget. Not the big budget, in this case, the lack of big budget, but the budget, because that was the catch-all for a lot of things.
Yeah,
we have a red dot for a Klingon ship, budget. We can't build it.
I know
for something, budget.
I know they were trying to play up the fact that Spock was really strong, but I think we knew that early on in the series when Kirk and Spock were fighting in the transporter room, and remember Spock had Kirk had that big club and he just brings his forearm down on it and
is it the one with the spores? This Side of Paradise.
Yeah, This Side of Paradise. So, we know...
Spock brings like a big chair over, a big something.
Yeah, but before that, remember Kirk had a club he was going to beat him with, and then Spock just kind of dropped his arm on it and bent it,
Yeah, so Spock is the Incredible Hulk, basically?
Yeah, so we already know that Spock was really strong, but they had to reiterate that in a mock time, and it came off silly because, he's smashing everything that's made out of metal, and I'm like, Vulcans would make stuff that would be strong enough to, for these rituals, especially if they're going to fight, that would stand up to their strength. You know, I mean, like one of their weapons could probably break one of our swords in half because they would forge their metals a hell of a lot stronger than we would, you know, if we were to make weapons like that for ourselves, because we're not that strong, you know, as a Vulcan.
Yeah, so it would be more logical for a Vulcan to build a weapon that would be logical for a stronger race to use. Although, you know, now that I think about it, amok time, and we've discussed this in our sometimes after conversations when we do these, is that on in every personal quarters on TOS on the Connie, there are these little gray. I think you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I always love talking about this because it's just certainly it's funny for years, but they have these gray computer screen monitors, things, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think they're just monitors like the little laptops they have on TNG. But anyway, when Kirk is split in two when the enemy within, he goes into his quarters and they're saying, oh, you can identify the Kirk, alternate Kirk with a star in his face, and he's doing all that, I'm Captain Kirk stuff, and he knocks the console off, and it bursts into sparks and everything. He's like, wait, makes sense.
Yeah,
so,
you're blind.
in amok time,
Yeah.
Spock has one in his quarters, and Uhura is on the intercom talking about the ship changing their course, and so Spock takes his fist and he smashes the console into like a aluminum foil.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like he was hitting a box. I mean, like an empty cardboard box.
Spock is so strong and has so much energy in him that he can literally transform the texture of a metal. Like the metal is normal, but he makes it into like crumple. Like it's foil. And that metal shouldn't crumple like this. Like, what kind of cheap stuff are you making your ship out of?
Because the pedestal it was sitting on wasn't even bending. It was just the monitor that was sitting on top of it that was getting crushed down.
I always make this little joke. Maybe Kirk got the PlayStation 4 version of that, and Spock got the Nintendo Labo, like the cardboard version of the monitor where it's just bling.
Yeah.
It's just, like I said, the Vulcans apparently can just change the texture of metal, can take gongs and just knock them down and pull weapons in two, and apparently have just really super strength beyond. So, you know, I guess the big thing is that keep a Vulcan from getting emotionally angry because you don't want to get into a fight with them.
Yeah, because you don't know
obviously they can break and change the nature of everything around them somehow. I guess that's the only way you can look at it in canon.
I mean, in TOS, we see Spock. I don't think this is the only time we ever see him do this, where he looks at a woman. I think it was in season 3 or something, and he somehow hypnotizes her to kind of just walk, you know, and grab a communicator. Remember, I was what's the name? I can't remember the name.
Yes, I know the one you're talking about. I think they were. God, they were in prison somewhere, weren't they? Or
yeah, it was the Captain not Wesley, but the Exeter.
Oh, it was Omega Glory.
Yeah, Omega. There you go.
It was one of the Yangs, wasn't it?
Yeah,
yeah. It was one of the Yangs, and they were trying to get a jailbreak, and you see Spock's eyes like that. They're cutting everything off, and she can move. It's almost like he can zombify people.
Yeah, and we never see him do that ever again. So we don't know what the extent of Vulcan powers are. I mean,
Vulcans have like these mental disciplines. Because I mean, theoretically, I mean, we can fast forward to Star Trek Voyager, which has a resident Vulcan, you know, in Tuvok. There's an episode, I can't remember the name of it now, where this Bajoran brainwashed Tuvok to get this message to reinvigorate the Maquis movement.
Yeah.
And Tuvok is sending out all these hypnotic messages to the crew.
That's right.
So apparently Vulcans are very talented empaths, maybe beyond what the Betazoids are.
Yeah.
So they must do a lot of self-control because they can obviously influence people. Maybe that's why Vulcans are unemotional, because they could destroy somebody with a thought if they wanted to.
Well, they remember that weapon that Picard was.
The Stone of Gaul. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that was sort of like a mental, you know, sort of enhanced their mental ability to be able to.
So I guess that's the title. I mean, just how strong are Vulcans?
Yeah, really. I mean,
obviously, unless that was just a budget thing, where Spock pounded that thing, obviously they can change the texture of metal.
Yeah.
Because I mean, of course, again, budget is probably the reality. They get a cheap one.
He's only a half Vulcan, so if he was a full Vulcan, can you imagine what his powers would be then?
Yeah, it's too close to melt that thing.
He maybe could fly. I don't know. You know, he just levitate things, and you know.
Right. I mean, you know, but like I said, because of the way TOS is.
Yeah.
And you know, that's why a lot of people you know, laugh at it and call it cheesy because of the budget issue. There are some issues in that are a little bit, I'm trying to think of a polite word to call it, based around the theater of the absurd at the time, where, things just go into some other place sometimes. And I think that with Vulcans, they weren't as featured in the Next Generation, so we didn't really see a lot of what strength Vulcans had. But in Voyager, we saw indications of that, because I know, and this is something else I wanted to mention about Vulcans too. From Star Trek Voyager on to Enterprise, is it just me, or did every Vulcan from Tuvok to T'Pol to Ambassador Saval, both from Enterprise, were they always having emotions that were just bubbling up to the surface somehow?
It seemed like that.
Because Tuvok seemed to be on the edge. Usually he had a good control, but he always seemed to be near on the edge of an issue sometimes.
Yeah. Even Vorik, the other Vulcan on
Vorik was in this almost permanent state of Punfar. I mean, that was what his function was.
Yeah.
Because he was a character. He was a Vulcan character that came out of the blue. We didn't know he was there.
Yeah.
They just slapped him on the ship to just basically declare his interest in B'Elanna and go through this thing with her and everything. But he always seemed a little bit bubbly. And then T'Pol, that was her character. She always seemed like her logic had a little faultiness to it.
I guess, maybe it has to do with the fact that, Leonard Nimoy was very good at playing, a Vulcan with his emotions in control. But maybe the other actors that play Vulcans really aren't very good at being able to duplicate what Leonard Nimoy could do.
Also, maybe they had better scripts for Nimoy. I mean...
Well, yeah, maybe.
I don't know. I think sometimes people have this idea that when they see, how do we make this alien totally logical? He's got to have some emotional conflict. Remember that little chestnut?
Yeah.
There was a big thing in the 90s where everything had to be, the Vulcan conflict, or the Star Trek conflict, or the Waldorf salad conflict. Whatever you wanted to pick, they turned into a conflict. So maybe they thought we have to give the Vulcans conflict by making them characters that are always emotional under the surface and it's waiting to scream out.
Yeah.
I mean, Tuvok had that mind meld with that guy who was a sociopath.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he's himself a complete sociopath, ready to kill everybody on the crew.
Yeah.
And it's hard to believe that a Vulcan would not be able to control those instincts, because there was an episode of TOS where Spock made a mind link with that Medusan.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they kind of were a joint being, and you could see that even in Spock's body, this very sensitive and emotional Medusan seemed to have a Spock measure of control. He wasn't totally absorbed where Tuvok would be. Yeah. So I just think the Vulcans got written differently. And in terms of Vulcan strength, I don't know if there are any examples of it. We get to Enterprise, where every Vulcan seemed very emotional.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And they really went for that. But as far as Vulcan physical strength is concerned, would you say a plot device might also have something to do with it? That, well, we'll make Vulcans this way and that way most times, but if the plot needs it, we'll make them split-second strength and very emotional?
Well, I don't know if that was intentional for T'Pol. I think, maybe, like I said, maybe it came out later because maybe some of the fans are saying, she's acting too emotional for a Vulcan.
Right. Well, even with Spock early on, they most of the time Spock was on pretty solid ground, but if he had an emotional episode, he seemed to go all the way with it.
Yeah, he'd shout across the bridge and
right. But with Spock, it made sense because he was half human.
Yeah.
Or when Sarek got that way, he had Bendai syndrome, which is what, Vulcan Alzheimer's, basically.
Yeah, it was mine.
Or something, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
So they had reasons for being that way.
Yeah.
And then with T'Pol, didn't she have something related to mind meld, some sort of Pinar syndrome?
Well, yeah, she got some kind of mental disorder from mind meld, having that forced mind meld from that.
Which I always found weird because, the Vulcans in the old series never mentioned, mind melds were something taboo in the past.
I know.
It was more that Victorian thing Vulcans always have. Oh, it's part of our private life. We don't discuss it,
Yeah.
As Pumfar, we don't discuss that, But Spock did say among Vulcans, emotion was considered bad taste.
Yeah.
So emotion or anything involved with it is probably kind of taboo.
Yeah, they just don't like people to see that they have emotion, but, I guess that's what it is.
And, the Voyager Doctor flat out said it. He's like, there's something kind of Victorian about your Vulcan ideas, and there is to a degree. Which in Enterprise, they get to the they get to this idea of the Serenite movement, who say that, oh, you've got Serac all wrong. He didn't want you to repress emotions. He just wanted you to control them, which is different. So we don't know. Vulcans might have a different future than we think. Assuming that in the Prime universe there is Vulcan now. I know in the other one there isn't, but I'll assume.
Well, you know, that's an interesting thing you just, because I've been brainstorming on this thing. Now I don't want to like bring up Abrams's movies or something like that.
Peripherally, I mean, we're focused on Trek Prime, but peripherally, it exists. It's in the universe. So,
but it did bring up an interesting scientific theory, which is about artificial singularities, and as we know, these singularities are supposed to be able to cut through time and space, and they don't obey the laws of physics inside them, inside these things. So what I'm thinking is, if you destroy a planet with an artificial singularity like was created in Star Trek, Abrams' Star Trek, wouldn't that not destroy every alternate Vulcan throughout all of time and everything? Every Vulcan would be destroyed no matter what reality you're in. Wouldn't that just suck all the Vulcans into that singularity and wipe it out?
Because, like I said, when it comes to the reboot and everything outside of Prime, basically it's like that episode of TNG where all the laws of physics go out the window. Yeah. And we can cue Q coming in and saying to us, well, why not? They're so inconvenient. Yeah. That's basically the way it ends up being.
I'm hoping that somebody that's either watching this can come up with an answer for that, because I'm not a brain on scientific theory. I'm just saying it's just something I've been thinking about. And I'm like, I watched Discovery, not Discovery, the Star Trek, but, the Discovery Channel, and they had a thing on black holes and stuff like that and how they function. And I'm thinking, well, Jesus, if they do that, if these things don't obey the laws of physics and they cut through time and space, okay, then clearly that every planet that, let's say if he was using that inside to destroy a planet, it would destroy every reality of that planet from throughout time.
One thing I will say, just as an aside, this has nothing to do with Vulcan, but it might. One thing I noticed about Star Trek and time is that in our universe, we perceive time as something we have no control over. Yeah. It's just, it happens. Anything relating to time is out of our control. I'm going to try to find a way to clean this up because I don't want to really offend anybody, but I would say that the context of our understanding of time is still a little religious in the sense that we think it's not in our hands. Yeah. I mean, not in the sense we believe in time and worship it, but, the idea of having faith in it. Yeah. Rather than seeing it for what it is. But in Star Trek, they understand things like tachyons and is it tetrons is the particle that moves through time or something? There's some particle.
I think it's tachyons
or whatever. There's some begins with a T anyway, and they're real things, and they study them, and they're part of singularities and wormholes and black holes. But of course, in Star Trek, they say in motion picture they used to be called a black hole. They call them quantum singularities in that time. But anyway, the point is they can seem to control it to a degree. In the sense of it not being so free and loose what it can do. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe in their universe, it doesn't operate by our out of control perception of it, because as we all know, none of us know how to control time. Yeah. I mean, people can go on YouTube and claim they can, but people claim a lot of things online. But the fact of the matter is that we have an understanding of it, but we're still in that culture where I feel that we're ready to get on our knees anything bigger than us. Mm. So, kind of a primitive understanding sometimes. So I think in Star Trek, sometimes they see something for what it is and study it, and they just go for it. Yeah. I mean, so I don't know how that would work in the Star Trek universe if there's some control over time. Yeah. So
I'm just saying. I mean, I realize it's the writer's prerogative to decide what they.
Well, that's it too.
But I'm just saying, as a theory, as a scientific theory, am I close to being right, or am I so far off the mark that I don't know what the hell I'm talking about? Because I'm just thinking, because when I do my best thinking when I'm taking a shower. Because I'm in there, there's nothing going on. I'm just sitting there thinking, and I'm like, wait a minute, I just caught something here that just don't seem to add up here, and I'm like, thinking about this, and I'm thinking, who can I find out? Who can I ask to see if this is even remotely possible? If this is even,
Well,
something.
like I said, usually Star Trek tries to affirm scientific things, and that can go into the Vulcan conversation really well because,
Yeah.
they used to consult on the original show with was it JPL and NASA,
Yeah.
and scientific organizations
That
for
advice
the
and theory.
accuracy of what they were doing.
Mhm.
I don't know if that continued post Gene Roddenberry. I don't know if anybody on Voyager or
They
all
did
right.
a lot of phenomena.
I think it's time to insert my chestnut. I don't think any scientist was consulted about the detector circuit. I mean, I don't think any researcher was ever consulted on that one. Like somebody went to MIT and said to an engineer, "We need to come up with a definition for a detector circuit." I don't think anything like that came up. That was just them. I mean, a quick name, put it on, but
yeah.
I guess it's going to be an every episode thing at this point. But anyway, the point is that, but like I said, most of the time they try to be accurate.
Yeah,
in terms of developing a future science.
Even if it's just a theory, they would still introduce it on Star Trek. I mean, they're talking about parallel universes and stuff like that. Even TOS,
although sometimes they do rush things, like I always felt that even though it made sense when they described it, the concept of anti-time, just the way they named it, seemed a little sloppy to me. I would think that something like anti-time would have a fancier name, but anti-time just seemed like they slapped it in there. I don't. Maybe it's just me again. But, like I said, people have different thoughts. But I guess maybe the idea was it's antimatter, like antimatter, anti-time, time, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
It
works in reverse, I guess. I don't know. It just.
I guess I don't know. Some people just,
That last episode was really dealing with a lot of things, that a lot of scientific theory and stuff.
Well, yeah, All Good Things was basically almost this textbook exercise in applied temporal mechanics.
Yeah.
Because
it was like graduation day for all the Star Trek fans that had been watching it for 7 years. Like, okay, now everything we know from 7 years, we're going to put it to the test in All Good Things, and we're going to find out if you can follow us.
Well, I will say it was an epic ending. I mean, it brought everything together, the future, the past. I mean, it brought everything together.
Yeah.
And it brought it together in that very thoughtful next generation way, although it definitely did. But in the end, it was like, oh, Q created all that, so we're all set.
Yeah.
None of that happened.
Yeah. They still tried to explain it, through the episode, I mean, like, especially Geordi. I mean, he kind of.
Yeah, it goes against not polluting the timeline.
Yeah.
But obviously, I think there are some people who probably took VCRs and spliced them together and put parts of All Good Things into Encounter at Farpoint, like how Troy announced to Picard about Riker's relationship.
Yeah.
But just little stuff like that. But anyway, the point is that, yeah, in terms of Vulcan being destroyed or not being destroyed because of singularities, I don't know. I mean, whatever that Nero was doing, it seemed to work. Now, we're drifting out of Prime there. Like I said, that's drifting out of Prime because that's what created this whole thing we got going now. But I guess, even though we're focused on Prime, it's hard not to discuss what's going on because it happened. It's a thing.
I mean, you could say, I mean, it was because our Spock, the Prime Spock, went into that timeline. So you could say, even though that timeline isn't Prime, what happened with Spock is part of his Prime timeline. You know what I'm saying?
And I wanted
to jumble.
Right, because Spock never indicated in any of the movies that Vulcan was destroyed in his universe. Because
he never said no.
In Into Darkness, he could have said, "Oh yeah, Vulcan was destroyed, and Khan is your enemy." But
I mean, we know Romulus was destroyed because Spock said it.
Yes, we know that because Brian Spock said it, and that was the catalyst for the events. But like I said, but with Vulcan's strength, then again, with a lot of things that are Vulcan oriented, even though they have spaceships, I get the impression that, or starships, I get the impression that Vulcans, in addition to being very strong, are also extremely secretive. We saw that a lot in Enterprise. I don't know how powerful their ships were at the time.
They did that too much though. That secretive stuff, going on, and especially with the military aspect of Vulcan,
that was an Enterprise thing, and that was a little bit dicey.
They were taking that to the nth degree with that. I mean, especially with that that guy there, well, the head of the military. What was his name there?
Was it Saval
No, the guy there that was and it turned out being a traitor there. He was working with the Romulans. Remember at the end?
of Enterprise?
Yeah, on Enterprise. Remember It was when they went to Vulcan to look for that triangle stone there that had all the things of Sarek inside of it. Remember?
Oh yeah, well, Archer was
Yeah.
possessed by the Katra of Sarek.
Sarek, yeah. And that guy that was head of the Vulcan military he was deliberately working on behest of the Romulan that he met up with at the end of the episode there, and said, he was including with them because they wanted to bring unification to them,
If we're gonna talk about Vulcans here,
Yeah.
I wonder if people, when they were writing Enterprise, if they sat around and said, well, even though Bones actually likes Spock, he seemed to have some distrust of Vulcans and some kind of doubts about Vulcan philosophy. And I'm wondering if that was set up like we would have give Bones, because he was a little older than the other crew members, a reason that, maybe in his parents' and grandparents' generation, which would have been Enterprise, that maybe they were used to these secretive, traitorous kind of Vulcans, and it was just kind of hard for him to look at Vulcans as being sincere.
I don't know. I always looked at Dr. McCoy's interaction with Spock as sort of a personal thing with him.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know why they would.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? I don't know who the writers had
personalities. You got two different personalities that always clash. There's people you meet in life where you just seem to always be at opposite sides all the time.
Right. I never got the impression he just liked Vulcans in general. It was just like a Spock thing.
Yeah, it was just a little thing that went on with him and Spock.
Like I said, maybe people read into that, like, oh, he keeps calling him a green-blooded Vulcan. He must not be into Vulcans, so we'll just have Vulcans be treacherous and give humans a reason not to like them, And I don't know. That's not the way I think of it at all.
I mean, he
I
could
think
get
Vulcans
grumpy with Kirk.
they are, and Bones just had this thing with Spock that was personal, and nothing to do with the race.
He could get grumpy with Kirk at times,
Yeah, that was Bones' nature. But I'm just thinking maybe the Enterprise writers added 2 and 2 and came up with 22.
Yeah.
They just overdressed an issue because the Vulcans had no other really reason to be like that.
Yeah.
I mean, hiding technology from the Enterprise crew or Starfleet at the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, that could be explained, a little bit soundly, I guess. They just didn't want to give humans too much here to choke on, as it were. But as far as the way they were trying to punish, Archer and all them because they went to Pajem there and they blew the lid off of that mess that was on that planet. And they were like, okay, well, you people, you can't be in space anymore. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then they kind of reiterated all that into that final scene where T'Pol kind of basically kicked the legs out from under, the argument that, hey, humans deserve to be in space just as much as we did when we first started. So, what are you complaining for? I mean, we screwed up when we went out there, and these people are going to do the same thing until they learn how to do it, right? So it's like, it seemed like it was a little out of place, for them to take that whole episode and use it as a catalyst to try to put Earth, the humans back on Earth and leave them there for another generation or whatever else, So, I don't know.
So, like I said, when we first started out with Vulcans on the TOS. Now, if I understand it, when they did the cage, was Spock established as a Vulcan at that point in some ways, or was he still kind of supposed to be a Martian in there?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I remember anybody saying anything about anything other than Vulcan.
Because in the cage, he had somewhat more kind of elfin characteristics, more like a impish alien.
You're talking about like the eyebrows and
his little odd mannerisms when he was playing with those little plants on Talos 4. He's like,
oh yeah,
like a little munchkin or something. It just he wasn't like Spock neighbor like fascinating. He's like,
yeah, the plants that sing like transporter beams,
Oh God, the planet's going.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they're trying to beam up the whole planet or something like that all the time.
Well, that's another little mechanic I wanted to mention with budget. That transporter sound effect being everywhere.
Yeah, I know. Every planet
you hear.
It's
the
either that or
background
wind chimes.
chimes.
Wind chimes and transporter effects that they would just
So
play in the
apparently,
background.
that was one way, Bones doesn't beam down and say, Jim, this planet is dingling and dangling just like every planet we go to.
Dingling and dangling.
like a Christmas tree, like a little dingling thing. Like I said, every planet had to do dingly bell noise.
Yeah, you don't just see people trying to find out where these sounds are coming from. What? It's over here. No, it's over there. And I was
like when you went down to when you on the next generation, you beamed down to a planet, either it was quiet or you heard wind or sandstorms. You didn't hear little bells and stuff. I think they were trying to make everything very alien. But you can do the transporter effect, and stuff.
Yeah, especially that vacation planet they visited there at the beginning, or first season where they met the rabbit and all that. They had all that.
Yes, the Shore Leave planet.
Yeah, I mean that.
Yeah,
had all that.
That was every second of that had a wind chime.
Yeah, I mean it was all that racket.
Wind chime.
Everything was like, God, it would just drive you up the wall if that was just 24 hours a day.
I mean, you almost wonder if the keeper's up there with a little wind chime, like, here's your illusion, I'm announcing with a wind chime.
Yeah, I mean, it reminded me, there was an episode on TV I was watching the middle there, I guess it was, they were fighting with the neighbors, and this neighbor had all the, like, hundreds of wind chimes.
Oh, yeah, some people do have those wind chimes all over there.
And they're trying to sleep, and all they could hear is clang, 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 like that.
It's like a Star Trek planet, doesn't it? Your old wind chimes. Well, I mean, I suppose it was good improv when they didn't have a budget to make sound effects. They just had the transport effect with wind chimes over it.
I mean, did they really have to have wind chimes? I mean, because why? How could you explain that? Is it the trees or maybe?
I mean, it's like on Doctor Who, they would do all kinds of strange things. Like they had this special. It was like a big can. And they do this thing with it to make that TARDIS noise.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like a weird engine.
They still use that sound even today when they do the news.
Right. I mean, I'm sure they've computer animated it by this point, but they still computerized it, but they still have the sound.
Yeah.
But at least with Doctor Who, when you go to someplace, even if they're going to, at the time, I remember some people say, well, on Tom Baker's years, we were at Rock Mine half the episodes. I mean, you don't hear digital bells and chimes in the background. I mean, that's a Star Trek mechanic I guess is unique. We can just say that's a unique thing.
Yeah, I don't, even on Lost in Space, I don't think we ever.
Right, because you beam down to a planet, you hear the transporter, and then when they're finished beaming down, you still hear the transporter way in the background.
Yeah, it's like, well, what else are they beaming down? I mean,
you hear this, and you hear, so every planet chimes, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. Now, did Vulcans have that when they did Amok Time? I don't remember Vulcan.
I don't think they did. All McCoy just said, "Oh, it's hot."
Vulcan is a chimeless planet, I guess.
Yeah,
there's no chimes.
Lots of heat.
Maybe the chimes don't like the heat. I don't know.
And that brings me to another thing about heat on Vulcan. It's like, it seems like the Vulcans like to live in caves. And I can understand that because caves are kind of cool. You go into a cave.
Like, because the stone holds the coolant, right?
Yeah, that's right. But at the same time, we see on Enterprise, T'Pol's mother lives in a house not much unlike a human house, and
is this logical?
Yeah, I mean, it's got in the front nice furnishings and stuff, and it almost looks too human. And I'm thinking, well, that's really a
yeah. I would think even though it was not crowded, I would think a Vulcan house would be closer to being an Asian style where it's very sparse.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't think Vulcans would be into cluttering all kinds of stuff. I mean, now obviously she didn't have all these little idols everywhere. Vulcans wouldn't have things that were practical. But still, it had a lot of human kind of stuff. Like I believe it had kitchen equipment.
Yeah, it had decorations. I mean. As far as I remember, I mean, it just seemed really.
I always thought Vulcan houses would be more Asian, like have very sparse kind of look to it.
Yeah, I mean, even outside or in the front yard there, she had that pretty like plants and everything and all that stuff.
Right. I mean, Vulcans. One thing about them, they do appreciate beauty, so maybe that's just they like to have plants around.
But that's really like the only time we ever see, a Vulcan home like that. Unless it was on the animated series, I think.
Well, I wanted to mention that because I thought that was actually kind of cool what they did. The home almost seemed to have a living quality to it.
Yeah.
It had these kind of like these big partitions that came down and flowed.
That's right. Yeah.
And everything And the houses were kind of like crystals. Remember, they were kind of like diamond crystals.
Yeah, yeah.
And they have, I don't know. I like the exoticism of Vulcan in that. With Enterprise, it all just seemed kind of ordinary.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just like they, even through all the other series and movies and stuff, they don't really show much of Vulcan architecture. You just see statues, caves, maybe some computers. Nothing like a living area or a place where people, where families would be or something like that. It just seems.
Vulcans also have Idic, so infinite diversity. Vulcans have very well diverse living areas. Some may live in cave-like places. Some may have more human aesthetics.
You would think because of the climate, they would have a sort of a unified kind of way of living on a planet that's hot.
Like I said, I know we're talking about another race here, but it would be like Klingons. We'd all naturally expect Klingon homes would have metal chairs with no pads on them, metal beds, everything totally uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Instead of calling it the living room, they'd call it the fire living room or the death living room, or they'd add some violent name.
The room of challenge.
They might literally call their beds the death bed because they love inserting death or doom.
I think they just sleep on. They just sleep on hard wood, is what it is. They don't even bother to put mattresses on.
Right, they sleep on a metal thing, like a metal.
Yeah.
They're into all that. With Vulcans, you think the aesthetic would be again very Asian. They would have this kind of very, very Spartan, very naturalistic kind of way.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think they would have a very ordinary environment like a human would at all. That was just odd. But like I said, again, when you all go to Muck Time, the whole I guess Vulcans each family has a place of Caliphate.
That's right.
I thought that was his family's place.
Yeah, because I guess Sarek was pretty important. And
so and that had a very Asian vibe, kind of Genghis Khan. But that was representative of ancient Vulcan, if I remember. That was that one holdover from the ancient Vulcan society.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Vulcans have gongs in their house. I can't imagine. It's our dinner hour. Boom! I don't remember the gong to announce everything in the house, but I mean, they may. I don't know. I don't know if Vulcans have gongs for everything. I don't think. I don't think they have. I don't think they go out and deal with predators with these weapons. I think that's all ritualistic to a degree. They're designed to kill, but they're like gladiatorial weapons. They're not. I don't think you use them in the common household. I mean, for all I know, when we go back to Vulcan in the future, you may see gongs everywhere. I don't know. The Vulcan aesthetic changes for the writer, so
I wish they would settle on just one.
Yeah, but that could be an issue with Star Trek anyway. Well, we have a new writer, which is fine, but then they're not told what the other writer did.
Yeah.
So like, well, Vulcans are this way and that way. Okay, we'll just add a bunch of other stuff, or.
There ought to be, at this point, there ought to be enough information out there to help any writer.
Yeah, you'd think. The internet being the way it is and just everything. We had 52 years of Star Trek to go with, so there's a lot of information there.
It's not like they're charting unknown territory now. It's all pretty well.
And that was an issue with TOS, too. They'd never done it before.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe it made a little more sense there that every planet had a wind chime on it. And
the same wind chimes always.
Right. I mean, I don't know. It's just background noise. I guess they figure you'll pay attention to the characters and what they're saying and doing, and you'll ignore the.
Well, there was times in that episode when they were on that planet there for shore leave, where the background noise almost drowned out the actors' line, the dialogue.
Right, the wind chimes right into the microphone, like.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like a train or something. It's just.
It was one of the few episodes where they were actually outside and not in a studio filming it. They were actually
if you look at the 60s to the 80s aesthetic, if there's any show that has a dream sequence, it's almost like cue the wind chimes. That was a thing of that time, too.
Yeah.
Because I was watching I can't remember what show it was, and somebody having a dream sequence, and you hear, ding! Apparently, wind chimes just mean there's a dream sequence coming.
Yeah.
So maybe that was just that old aesthetic that we don't know how to do a dream sequence. I mean, sometimes in the late 80s and early 90s, somebody would start playing a glockenspiel.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they indicate a dream sequence. But in the 60s through 80s, you hear, ding, 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 that would be, that's not real. So the chimes were just an indication it wasn't real. So maybe that was just the idea that this was not real, so we got to have chimes playing right in front of the mic. Just so you know this isn't real. Like, oh, yes, well, Alice and the White Rabbit could be real in the Star Trek universe unless we have ding, 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 ding.
They could have used that sound effect when they visited the Edo there in the first season of Next Generation there. And, they brought Wesley down with them, and he got himself in trouble because he stepped on.
Oh, the Edo planet?
Yeah.
Do they have wind chimes on that planet too?
It could have put him in there. It would have fit. You know, considering how everything was so, you know, glamorized. You know, with
I don't want to get too, this is out of Vulcan, but I just want to mention that episode. When I look at it, that was at a water refinery, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
I noticed the all these blonde characters in togas. That's basically a Greek hell spa, isn't it?
Yeah, and
the whole setup is like some Greco-Greek Roman-esque hell spa. They're rubbing each other with oils, and everybody has blonde hair. It's just it's this Greek sensuous hell spa fantasy.
Yeah, nobody has a job. I mean, you just sit around all day.
Yeah, they run everywhere, but I don't ever see anything. I don't see any tools working on stuff. It's just like it's like they're this little protected world.
Yeah.
I mean, you made a point. I never saw anybody in there working. They were just running around. It's like something out of Logan's Run. They're all running around, polishing each other up and running around.
Yeah, just having a grand old time. You know, and that was pretty much all he did.
Well, I noticed, you know, in that episode, I know we're getting out of the subject here. When Yara's running around, I thought he was making a passing remark, but it might have been a little shade throwing too. Oh, it's like an Eden here. I mean, this is like a Garden of Eden where everybody is just totally free of everything.
Yeah.
You know, even in the Star Trek world, you know, everybody has a different aesthetic, but they're all working on something. They're doing a project, or you can see people. I mean, you don't see people running around the ship in little togas.
Yeah.
I don't always see people wearing a toga.
They keep saying we turn Earth into an Eden, yet there's still people doing things, you know.
Yeah, you know, it's a different aesthetic, but you don't see people running around on Earth with rubbing each other down with oil all the time. It's not like Logan's Run or anything. Like I said, it's not like this pleasure palace. But that was the whole point of the Edo. Like everything was provided by this other entity, and they just lived in this pleasure dome.
Yeah,
which is a water refinery. But like I said, I never imagined Vulcan like that. I imagined that Vulcans were scientists and artisans.
Mm.
You know, like people who were very, very intense craftsmen and very intense scientists. And you remember how Sarek didn't see the logic in Spock going to Starfleet Academy.
Yeah.
He felt that his talents would be better suited to the Vulcan Science Academy.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say felt, but he thought.
Yeah, I guess he logically evaluated that Spock would be more, you know.
And he felt that, well, he's going to Starfleet Academy, that's his human side.
Yeah.
You know, that's his side that yearns for exploration. Yeah. Where I don't know, I wanted to ask you, do you think Vulcans have an exploratory aesthetic, or do you think they tend to view the universe with caution?
Well, that came later, but I think originally they probably struck out into space the same reason why humans did. I mean, you know, they wanted to see what was out there, just to expand their horizons of scientific knowledge. I mean, it's got to be. I mean, if you're a scientist, if you're really into knowing things, you're always going to be pushing yourself past the next boundary, past the next horizon. You know, keep going. You know, just like we did from the beginning when we was floating around the water in these wooden boats here. You know, and people were saying, "Oh, the world's flat," and he said, no, it ain't. You know, it's round, and I'll show you." And he did. So I mean, it's like,
like I said, you know, and remember, the Vulcans were like the first race we ever really saw on Star Trek. Well, okay, granted, when we first heard them referred to, they were Vulcanian. For a long time, there was a Vulcanian expedition. Spock referred to himself as Vulcanian, and then, remember that Vulcanian stuff? That never happened. I'm Vulcan now.
And, you know, speaking of first expeditions, I mean, they kind of like took a lot of things that are in today's time, and now they've made it Star Trek canon, like I Love Lucy, The Three Stooges, you know.
Well, you mean through Tom Paris' little TV thing?
No, I mean from, you know, the Enterprise. Remember when T'Pol was talking about one of her relatives had visited Earth in the 50s, you know, and they crashed on.
You know, I think that may go to the reason why I love Star Trek. I always considered it to be our future, supposedly.
Yeah, but they never would say like anything specific until, you know, like that episode where they were actually mentioning something. They would make up, like, remember Tom Paris was trying to be like Flash Gordon, but they wouldn't call it Flash Gordon. It was something else. Remember when he was in the holodeck? Well,
there's our good buddy copyright, but, it was Flash Gordon. Captain Proton was Flash Gordon.
Yeah, But the thing of it is that
Arachnia was Ming the Merciless. We all got it.
But on Enterprise, they actually, said, "Oh yeah," they said my hair looks like Mo, and then who's Mo? Of course, that's from the Three Stooges, right?
Right.
So, and then I
So
love
maybe it's provisional pass, like I don't know. I don't know if they dare mention. I don't know if I dare mention it.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Begins with a D, ends with a Y.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
There's a mouse involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard about them and their YouTube campaigns. So
yeah.
Stay away. I don't know why they're that way, but but I wouldn't dare mention anything like that.
But it's sad that it has to be like that, because if you're going to talk about humans as we are today going into the future and stuff, then why can't we be allowed in a TV show to just say, okay, yeah, we had Coca-Cola, we had Pepsi. What's the problem?
Well, now that when they did the reboot movies, they just slapped Budweiser Classic into that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a problem with it because there was always drinks or something like that, but it actually harkened back to, this is Earth, we are on Earth.
It did. I don't know. The branding aspect of it I wasn't into, but I guess the reference.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of reiterated that, we are on Earth, and Budweiser's still around.
Have you gone to Excelsior Scientia, where they actually have a 24th century UPS freighter?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they have the FedEx one too.
Yeah, I mean, it's not canon, but it's in this.
Right, but it's actually it's a ship that has little nacelles and everything.
Yeah, it's almost made like a Daedalus class ship.
It's like a little cargo pod, like a cargo drone.
Big fat nacelles on it. It probably does like Warp 2, and that's about it.
Yeah, I don't know if those were Enterprise era supposedly or what.
I think that would be pre-Enterprise,
Because I can't imagine in Enterprise, UPS delivering to NXL1 or anything. Because I mean, when you saw them, they still had those baseball caps with NXL1 on them.
Well, I suppose if you're living on off-world on another colony or something, you want to order something. Then FedEx would come deliver it for you, or something like that would come.
I guess, or maybe FedEx Transporter Service. I don't, because it's the new economy. I don't know how those brands would work in the future if they have them.
If it would still be around. I mean, there's outfits today right here in our own state that have been around for 200 years or more. I mean, it's not unheard of that something would survive.
Well, remember, it's the same economy though. In their future, there's a different economy. I don't know. Maybe they just use the name as a label.
Yeah, it's just
like a familiar thing
with it. It's a familiarity thing. People know what it is. It's
like I said. Until we go see a starship pass some orbital McDonald's, and they won't start talking too much.
I wouldn't be surprised you go to McDonald's and they got replicators, right in there, and you just pick, whatever the hell you want,
Right, exactly. We have the human menu and the Klingon menu.
Yeah, we get the added Klingon menu with the McDonald's now, so you can have live Gach.
The harder target button with a nice side of Gach.
Yeah.
The Klingon McDonald's menu.
With fire wine on the side.
Right, with your free fountain fire wine.
Yeah.
Now I'm getting into the theater of dessert, aren't I?
Right.
Well, that'd be a comedy skit, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be funny, though.
Klingon McDonald's, where I want my side of Gach and I want my 3-liter blood wine.
Here's my extra value meal. It's like
yes, here's your extra value Gach,
Can you imagine doing a commercial, McDonald's commercial for Klingons?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much writing a comedy skit right there.
Yeah. See them in McDonald's beating themselves over the head with, each other while they're in there eating and stuff. Ronald McDonald would have like...
Yeah, I can see them now. They have the order and they'll bring out the pain sticks or something. You've dishonored my order. I don't know. I can't imagine how, have you heard the conversational Klingon audio tape?
Not the audio tape. I mean, I got the little...
It's so funny because Michael Dorn adds all these mega Klingon anecdotes. Like,
really?
In Klingon shops, they don't allow browsing. They actually have a statement, buy or die.
Buy or die. If you're here,
which sounds so Klingon. Their draconian sensibility is like, oh, you will not buy, we will challenge you to a fight to the death. Everything has to be over the top that way.
Yeah.
So they develop Klingons. But no, seriously, with Star Trek and familiarity with time, boy, we really went all over the place tonight. We did Vulcans, then we went into Klingon McDonald's. But like you said, you wanted to kind of put some humor into this because
it's just.
I think that's what like I said, I consider us basically kind of a minor sidebar to Trek yards, and they have their accuracy and their starships. And I guess our thing is philosophy and humor.
Yeah.
I guess that's the idea. We're philosophizing about different aspects of Star Trek with a lot of jokiness.
We kind of spell out the universe that all those spaceships flying around in. So we just
right. We're filling in the space.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I was watching an episode. I just want to finish this off because is there any more Vulcan stuff you wanted to mention? Because I think we kind of covered that.
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah,
But I was watching an episode of Voyager today, which is probably not my favorite, but they encountered this race called the Vostagai, and their station got blown up by some anomaly. And at the beginning, they say, "Oh, the Vostagai seemed friendly, and they had things that could help us." And after that week, we never hear of the Vostagai again. We never see the Vostagai.
Yeah.
And it reminded me. We keep seeing Klingons, we keep seeing Romulans. What about all these races? They have like maybe a mention, or we see them once and they never show up again.
Yeah, I mean, some people get interested in them, like the.
In Voyager, because they're moving so fast out of space, it makes sense they might not see the Vostagai again. But who knows? If we go back to the Delta Quadrant, get all these races to explore, all these people, Voyager. Who knows who Voyager encountered when we weren't aware of it? You can't tell me you saw every mission they had.
No, but I would like to see them explore more with the Tholians, the Gorn.
Right, there are races in TOS we didn't see a lot of. We didn't see a lot of the Gorn.
They're part of the Alpha Quadrant, And
like I said, the Gorn kind of came off as stereotypical warriors. They may not be warriors at all. They may just be very protective. They may have a totally different aesthetic.
They're just territorial, I think.
Tholians would be kind of xenophobic.
Yeah.
One race, this may sound like an odd thing or a one-shot, but just the abilities they seem to have were another xenophobic race from the Next Generation called the Paxans.
Oh, yeah.
And all we know about them is that they are apparently a humanoid race who can possess humanoids and give them a much deeper voice.
Yeah.
Because, when Troy gets possessed, all of a sudden she's talking like that. So I guess that's what we know the Paxans can do. If it gets inside your head, you all of a sudden talk in a very deep voice. Well, that's, I guess, their mechanic. But, obviously they're xenophobes. But another race, we saw them in a fan film, the Iconians. I'd love to see a lot more on them.
Yeah.
Because they opened up this whole story with them. Oh, and then they find them in another thing in Deep Space Nine, one of the Iconian gateways.
Yep.
So apparently they were a super powerful race, almost like the Time Lords in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Who could jump through time and space. But people on other planets descendant of Iconians? Are they a seed race of other species? Who were the Iconians? The Breen.
Yeah.
Who are the Breen? We see these aliens in space. Are the Breens furry, wampa-like creatures, or what? What?
Yeah, really.
Who are these people? We don't really see a lot of them.
Yeah.
To be honest, we probably see more Pakleds than them. And even though we don't see much, we know what they're about.
Yeah.
But, we've explored the Borg. We have the Klingons we've explored.
Yep.
Romulans, border and underexplored, too.
Yeah.
Because we know what they're supposed to be doing, but we don't know much about Romulan society.
Yeah.
We know that they're a military government. There's a lot of oppression.
Yeah.
But, it's implied that Romulans have a sense of beauty. They have art. They have a whole other side we don't see.
Yeah.
Romulans aren't like Klingons. There are Romulans who are creative and thoughtful, and, I think it's like even Klingons must have a side that we've talked about this, that isn't warrior related.
Yeah.
Klingon engineers, Klingon school teachers you mentioned.
Yeah.
Maybe even, I don't know, Klingon Klingon yeomans. I don't know what they have. A whole other Klingon system.
Yeah.
I don't know what Klingons would have, but there's all these underexplored paths that we could explore, and new aliens too.
Yeah.
I know that in the Titan reboot that they did with the books, they had some Xindi crew members on board.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, that makes sense because the Xindi were just a race plopped on us in Enterprise.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I don't
There's a
know
lot.
what.
There's a lot there just in the Alpha Quadrant that we still haven't really, done enough with. And they are pushing us out in the Delta Quadrant and the Gamma
Well, that's
Quadrant
why
and
I
all
thought
that.
it was a little strange when they said, well, when we're doing Voyager, we've exhausted the Alpha Quadrant to your limit. No, you haven't.
No.
You've got species that we heard referred to. For example, even in Voyager they did that. There's a species, and this is some random reference that the Doctor made. I think it was referring to Cass or something she had happened to her.
Mm-hmm.
There's a race in the Beta Quadrant, maybe near the Klingon Empire, called the Yatho, who can anticipate future events. Why don't we see the Yatho?
Yeah.
I mean, they're right there, right near the Klingon Empire. So why don't we see these races that they just casually mention?
Yeah.
Or we saw them once and they were portrayed one kind of way. Why don't we see more of the Sheliak Corporate?
Yeah.
They're a non-humanoid. Well, they look kind of like Excalbians if you look at them, kind of like rocky, but they have bird wings.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like hidden, like in a shadow, but yeah, they kind
You
of
could CGI a member of the Sheliak species.
Yeah.
I mean, so we could have non-humanoids. What species was Eric's in the animated series? That three-armed orange character?
I don't know what a species was, but they could definitely CGI that. They could CGI that.
We haven't seen much of Kazinti.
Yeah.
And Kashian are canon because we saw Shatner throwing her across the.
Yeah, the bionic Shatner.
Right, bionic Shatner. So Kashians are canon.
Yeah.
And apparently can take quite a whooping because. I don't know.
I mean, why haven't they put any of them as crew members or something? On the ship?
I don't know. I mean, they must have plenty of cat uniforms left over from Beauty and the Beast. I don't know. I mean, all these big hairy things they could put on, whiskers and. I don't know. I mean,
whenever you look at the bridge makeup, they never really try to go to the exotic for an alien crew member. They always stick to the norm.
I think our good friend budget has to do with this. They just don't want to. Yeah. Like I said, I like to see more of the Orions.
Yeah.
I guess in Discovery, getting out of canon again, we're going to be seeing Rigelians, which I believe have big almond eyes.
Okay.
Or that's Saurian. That's Saurian. Yeah. But aren't Rigelians another species too?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're not Orion.
No. I mean, we saw Enterprise. They showed us the Andorians. They really did a lot with them. So we got the
right. Well, we got the Andorians. We got a lot of them. I'm glad we got a lot of Andorians.
Yeah.
Who, unbeknownst to us, refer to humans as pink skins.
Yeah.
Unless we're not pink. Because humans have a wide. I guess I don't know if Andorians have other color schemes. They all seem to be blue.
I guess that must be they're all blue or they're.
Until green and purple Andorians show up, we'll have to just settle with that.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting if Andorians have other ethnicities. I don't know.
I'd like to hear describe what those antennae are for.
Well, they move around. They're like.
Yeah.
They're not ears, though, are they?
I don't know, because their hair covers the sides. You don't see ears. But I'm just wondering if that's ears or if it's some other kind of sense that they have.
Andorians more or less always have beetle haircuts.
Yeah.
They have this little mop toppy where they could have, and I don't. Are Andorians supposed to be related to dragonflies or something, or like insects?
Right. I don't know. I don't think so.
Or are they supposed to be an abstraction on the Smurfs? I don't.
The Smurfs. Oh man.
I don't know if Andorians are supposed to be Smurfs.
Pretty close, I'll tell you, because their hair.
They're warrior race, but they do have Smurf-like aspects. I mean,
yeah, they're blue. They got white hair, so it's like the bonnet they all wear.
I don't know why the tentacles, the little headpieces moved around. That was a little strange, but maybe that's like a sensor, like they have a sense with that.
Yeah, maybe it's something another sense that we don't have that they do, or something.
Like a tail, like a dog's tail will wag.
Yeah.
Maybe those little antennae are an indication of Andorian's mood.
I mean, we know if they lose one, they kind of lose their balance a little bit. Their equilibrium gets.
Maybe it's a coordination thing. Like I said, maybe they're insectoid, but they do have a Smurf aspect to them. I don't know why, but they have a Smurf way about them.
Yeah.
They're an unusual alien. And I'm glad they included them in Enterprise. So I'm glad we got more of them.
Yeah.
Because they were a sidebar in we only saw two. We saw that one on that was in Babel. What was his name? forget his name in Babel.
Well, yeah, he was disguised as an Andorian.
Well, there was a real Andorian in there, wasn't it? Who was involved with Sarek somehow?
Oh yeah, he was, because they were
Gav.
questioning Gaff, yeah, and it was they were questioning, and that Tellarite, that's another one they did a little bit more with.
Tellarite, yeah, they explored Tellarite, so I'm glad they did. And we get a Tholian, even though he's in the mirror universe, we get a Tholian.
Yeah.
Who are apparently crystal spiders. So
yeah,
I guess that's what they're supposed to be now. I always thought it was a helmet for years.
A helmet, yeah.
Yeah, when they showed that little thing, I didn't think that was actually what a Tholian looked like.
I know. I wish they'd have done more. It looked just like a painting or something.
Right, but apparently that's what they are, and they have their spider legs. So.
Yeah. I don't know.
But like I said, there are definitely non-humanoid races. One creature I would love to see what they actually look like, it was referenced in Wolf of the Foe, then again, a lot of things were referenced in that, is the Meletus cloud creature.
Oh.
It's gaseous.
I always thought that he was referring to that one there where Kirk was trying to kill it there. Remember, he was...
an obsession, the one that had the sweet odor?
Yeah, yeah.
But that was always gas. It wasn't solid ever, was it?
Yeah, he said when it would become a rock, like, and then it would just all of a sudden turn into a gas, and it would come down and attack the crewman, and then it would just disappear back into a solid.
So you think that was what the Meletus was?
That's what I always thought he meant when he was saying that in that episode. You know, that he was.
They never mentioned what that race was supposed to be or what that creature was called, was it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of open there for interpretation.
I would love to have seen something where they bring the Organians and the Q together.
Yeah, you got a lot of super beings in the Star Trek universe.
Because the Organians, the Q might find Organians intimidating. I don't know.
Are they even at the same plane of evolution as the Q?
Because the Organians seem to have a lot of powers the Q have.
Yeah.
They can manipulate matter and things like that.
They did show Organians on Enterprise. Remember, they would take over the crew at random, and
right, they did. They were kind of doing research.
Yeah. That was a pretty interesting.
So we know that Organians are generally formless, but apparently they can assume humanoid form. Actually, I've got a really good idea for my video if I can keep this in my head.
Write it on piece of paper.
Shapeshifters. Because,
like the Odo, yeah.
Well, not just that, but the Organians, they can just imitate human form too.
Yeah.
But then again, like I said, I don't know if I save it for that video, but is the human form for an advanced being really that hard to imitate?
I guess they're trying to say something philosophical here by saying that it is. I don't know. I don't know.
Because Q says in his very omnipotent way, "You're a minor species in all senses."
Yeah.
In other words, implying that we're not that big a deal.
Yeah.
So Q can just zap himself into whatever shape he wants. So human, that's gonna be fun for a while. Just get a human costume. That's easy, or whatever that Cobra thing.
But at the same time, he says that he kind of likes hanging around with them because it's just maybe he's just bored.
Captain.
Yeah,
I can't see Q showing up wearing Wesley Crusher.
Oh man!
I'm gonna pick the worst outfit on the ship, and here I am. Remember, when he had that gray outfit when he lost his prize. Like, these are my colors. He likes to be the captain all the time.
Yeah.
Or that Cobra thing, whatever that was.
This game that I have, and I still have it, where a board game. It comes with a videotape, and it's Q on the tape. You just put it in your VCR, and you just play along with him. It's like a game.
Is it that Borg thing?
It's got the Borg in it, but it's not really so much about the Borg.
Oh, I thought it was Star Trek Borg.
No,
which also has Q in it.
I got a box.
Oh, is it one of those TV VCR kind of games?
Yeah.
Where it has John Delancey in it, and he's kind of guiding you. I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, they made two of them. They made one with the Klingons, where they had the man that plays Gowron, the actor that plays Gowron.
Robert O'Reilly?
Yeah, he's in it. And I have that one. And then they made another one where they had John Delancey playing Q in it. And you play along with it as it's playing out on the VCR. So it was like, I guess you could consider those things to be like kind of canon because they had Lancey he was involved with another starship and they had some time travel involved. They were, trying to change events in one of the crewmen's lives or something like that, where he could see his father or something. And, it was pretty interesting because they did bring some actors from, from Star Trek into it. They were just playing different characters, but
Yeah, I see what you mean. Well, anyway, we did exactly what we wanted to do. We talked about Vulcans, and we just
and
basically went out into transdimensional subject matter.
Like paint on the wall. We just
Right, to spread out, But like I said, Star Trek isn't always a static thing. I always love it when we talked about Picard a little earlier, where he had a sense of humor because you saw how interesting his humor was. There was a scene on the runabout where he was talking about listening to this lecture, and he started imitating this very boring guy who kept talking in one incredibly unbroken sentence. You see him crossing his eyes and being silly. And I think, boy, Picard can be kind of cool, You think of him as being a solid guy, but he has a humor and he has a droll sense about him.
Yeah.
And another one I love, we could do this on a Picard profile, but I wanted to mention, I love the one where he's totally messing with Ardra.
Oh, yeah.
Like, come back, Ardra, wherever you are. It's like he just enjoyed messing with her.
Yeah.
Because, of course, she was so over the top. Appearing in his quarters with all this wind machine. It's like, oh, come on. This is, this is obvious.
Yeah.
You're ridiculous and vulgar. Who are you fooling?
Doing anything you can't do.
This is like your classic horror movie trope.
Yeah.
You think Q's going to appear with wind machines behind him? And that's why, Picard, when Picard's like, well, could he be Q's like, oh, Q would bother with contracts.
Yeah.
Or economic forecasts. Yeah, that's just like, because it's a flim flam.
Yeah.
I know Ardra was pretty obvious from the beginning. Because it was like, why does she care about economic forecasts if she's going to enslave the population?
Yeah.
This is a total con job.
Yeah.
How Kirk would be, it's like, you're not the devil, you're a con artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to set my giant phasers on you, but whatever Ardra did to him, could you imagine Ardra with Kirk's mechanic? Oh, that could have happened, couldn't it? Phase 2. That was a Phase 2 story, wasn't it?
That could have been.
Could you imagine Ardra with...
Oh, yeah.
That's season 3 stuff.
I have 430 lives up, and they'd be bringing that speech up again, where he's got all such responsibility, and,
Yeah, because, I like it with Picard because he could play with her with some authority and dignity. What made you? Yeah. What would I do if I told you I could take her powers away from her and make earthquakes happen? And that's totally Picard, like taking full control. Whereas Kirk would have got up there and been a blowhard.
Yeah. But,
or if that had been Janeway, it would have been get out. She's a little sharper. And Cisco pretty much would have bludgeoned them.
Yeah, like you did with Q, with telling him
boxing match. Picard never hit me. I'm not Picard. Cisco didn't take stuff. He was a little tougher, He had
a temper.
And he wasn't that interested in a lot of nonsense. He was a no-nonsense kind of guy. So, anyway, now that we've done Vulcan and we've moved on to awkward moments, we pulled a lot of continuum tonight. So, I'm going to make myself a commitment. I think one thing we were going to do, but we didn't have time this week, was to test a mechanic on here to share pictures and stuff. So I'm hoping, if I can remember it, I may write it down after this. We'll talk about shapeshifters next week because that's a big subject that could actually go into a lot of other things because I wanted to do that early on.
Yeah.
Because other shows have had shapeshifters, but Star Trek has delivered us a whole universe of variable form species. So hopefully we'll be doing that if I can remember it. I'll try.
Okay.
But this is an interesting conversation, and this live long and prosper. We really mean it. I'm laughing after it. I shouldn't be. This is a Vulcan moment, but hey. And just to kind of end that, I don't know if this will pick it up, my first Star Trek knick-knack. It's my mother's.
Wow.
Spock Kirk there. This was ordered over the TV, and it's raised. This is, you know, I'm gonna get rid of a lot of things, but this should really be in a frame. That's important. I mean, that's the first sort of thing I ever had.
Yeah.
So anyway, see you next time. And this has been a interesting and quirky and pretty brilliant conversation at times, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll see you next week. Live long and prosper, everybody.
Bye.